It's the Brad and John Show.
Brad and John Show. Today's date is the 15th of January. This is the C Block. I am Brad Hildebrand. He is John Combest. John, an ultra-conservative dude. Brad, an American. An American, although it's interesting.
What a great way to describe us, Brad. You're so far above the partisan battles.
It's interesting. On Mark Cox this morning, he went off. Apparently, they put in a new text line. They have a new text line where people can text in. I guess it's anonymously because they don't know who the people are. And he's getting all sorts of hate texts, and people are getting him grief because of the fact that he made fun of, if you're an independent, he's calling you out that an independent is really sort of like a person that should not be paid attention to. You're either a Republican or a Democrat. There's no in between. Yeah. You can't be an independent.
I agree, Brad. And you know, when he first said that, he was thinking of you. He had a picture of an old man that's missing a gallbladder. He had that picture. Brad, I heard a couple weeks ago that Westplex Talk has a text line, but I haven't heard what the number is lately. What is it?
956-WESTPLEX, 956-WESTPLEX, or 956-937-8753. You can text or you can call and leave an audio message. That's what it is right there. And remind me, I got three things to talk about. First off, Emerson. Then we'll talk about Miss Racial. What was the other thing we were going to talk about? We just talked about the last break.
How concerned you are for St. Louis Public Radio.
Oh, okay. First off, Emerson. They used to have a military contract when I was flying helicopters back in the day. Occasionally, we would get permission to fly over it because of the fact it was sort of fun to watch. It's right on the approach to the airport. So if the planes were landing on 30 left and right, we couldn't usually go over there. But if they were taking off on 12 left and right, we would get permission to fly over Emerson. And at the point, hold on a minute. And back in the day, hold on one more time. Okay, back in the day, they had a contract for some piece of equipment that was going on some of the tanks, and they actually had a tank track set up on their property where they would drive the tanks around and use this precision equipment. They would test it right there on the grounds of Emerson Electric right there in Ferguson, which is fascinating. Alan Barkley told me about this, and I don't believe it. So one of my other pilots, I said, hey, can we fly over there? Okay, we flew over, and here's these tanks driving around on this course in the back of the Emerson property back there. So anyway, that's my Emerson.
And it was decades before Ferguson actually needed tanks.
Right, exactly. Way ahead of their time. Okay, here's my problem that I have with St. Louis Public Radio. It was announced last year that the University of Missouri is going to essentially, and I still say this is what's going to happen, University of Missouri is going to give KWMU to a local group that's already formed called Friends of KWMU, okay? Here's the problem with that. If you know anything about not-for-profits, this is what happened to KDHX. When you get the not-for-profit, you have to have a board. One person, did you know this? One person cannot have control of a not-for-profit. It has to be like a board. You can't own an LLC.
Correct. Yeah, you can't have a one-person nonprofit. There has to be a board. Yeah.
Right, it has to be a board. It's not like an LLC or an Inc. or something like that, where you can be the sole stockholder or the sole owner. Okay, on a not-for-profit, there has to be a board. Okay, the problem that happened with St. Louis Public Radio, I mean, with KDHX, is the board got wackadoodle. Okay. And I say they planned this whole crazy thing about, hey, we're going to declare bankruptcy.
And who was going to make money, Brad? Who was going to profit from
the members of the board? And they ended up with, remember, the deal was they said they owed $2 million. And if you remember the story, a lot of the people that they owed money to said they would waive their rights to that claim on a bankruptcy if they would just continue on with KDHX. And KDHX said, no, we're going to pay you in full, because they had a backdoor deal with with the other guys, the K-Love, the EMF people, that they were going to pay $4.75 million. So the deal was going to be, they were going to take the $4.7 million through bankruptcy, pay off the $2 million in creditors, who were a lot of their friends were their creditors as well. These are friends of the board members, the lady who did the PR and stuff like that. Go ahead, sue me if you want. My phone number is 314-280-8880. Send me and cease and desist. I'll be more than happy to say, because I'm speaking.
Go ahead. Keep
I'm
going,
speaking the truth. Okay. So then it got complicated and went to a bidding war. They went to an auction, and the local Joy FM people, which is called Gateway Creative Broadcasting, they bid $8.75 million. So do the math. The KDHX board owed $2 million. They got $8.75 million. I think that means they have $6.75 million in the bank. Correct, John?
It seems that way, sure.
Okay, so let's take this. Let's say the University of Missouri gives KWMU to Friends of KWMU, which is not for profit. And at some point in time, the people for that group are all well-meaning people. Let's say through people just resign from the board, die off, or some kind of a crazy power struggle goes on, and a new group of people, after they have gotten the license for KWMU comes along, a new group of people run the board and say, hey, remember back in the day with KDHX where they sold the station for $8.75 million and now they have jobs for the rest of their life? They don't have to go to work anymore because they can just pull down their $6.75 million. Let's do the same thing with 90.7. See what I'm saying, John?
I get exactly what you're saying. Yeah, so you're saying that in general, you might not use the word conspiracy, but you would certainly use the word kabuki, and you would say that people are going to profit from this, and this is a grand scheme, much like KDHX, for people to fleece well-intentioned people.
Well, the idea being that right now the license is controlled by the curators of the University of Missouri. So in other words, you're not going to have any funny business there, or maybe you might. You're not, because there's open. It's all above board as far as the university is concerned. Now, people who work there may have an issue with me saying that, but you know what I'm saying. I mean, for the most part, it's a government entity. It's publicly audited. You can see what's going on behind the scenes. You know who owns the license. It's the university. They're not going to pull any shenanigans. But remember my crazy story. Brad put on his journalism hat, and what did Brad do? He called various people at KWMU, and nobody would give me an answer because I said, are you buying this from the University of Missouri of St. Louis? Our University of Missouri system, are they giving it to you? Well, that hasn't been decided yet. Okay, you came out and announced that the station is going to be transferred from University of Missouri to a local group. What's the financial transaction there? Can we see what that is? And I never got an answer. And the interesting part of it was the woman that you know who I'm talking about, Miss FYI, who's on Twitter all the time. I contacted her and she goes, I don't know anything about it. And so they referred me to the official spokesperson for KWMU, and I called several times and finally got a call back. We don't know the circumstances involving the deal yet. That has yet to be determined. Come on, give me a break. That would be like you going to the car dealer and you coming home with a new car and someone said, John, you got that new car. Did you finance it or did you pay cash? I can't release how I acquired that new car. Get what I'm saying, John?
I get exactly what you're saying. And I look back, Brad, we had a full-throated discussion of this appropriately last Valentine's Day when you were all hot about everything that happened with this. And you went into the discussion of, as I recall, the back and forth between you and I is you wanted an answer from Joe Manis, who was formerly of the Beacon, and we don't need to read her resume here because we don't have time. But Joe essentially said that she didn't have an answer, and you didn't like the fact that she didn't have an answer. And I said, if they don't have an answer, they don't have an answer. Like, Joe can't give you an answer if she doesn't know the facts.
But when I talk to the official spokesperson for KWMU and I get the same story, doesn't that?
Yeah. I mean, and as I recall, Brad, our disagreement there was that you're not entitled to an answer. And particularly, you're not entitled to an answer that they don't have.
John, that's double speak. That's you putting your mouth.
It's not. I mean, how are they, if they don't know the answer, how are they supposed to? Just because you don't like the fact they don't have an answer doesn't mean they should give you an answer. Do you want them to just make up a story?
John, somebody there at KWMU knows how the deal's going to come down. Somebody knows.
So do you think maybe, Brad, they can't speculate because the deal's not done?
But John, then don't release the stupid story.
We'll release the story and say, here's what we can say. Here's what we can't say. I guarantee you they have a document written by legal that says we can say this, we can't say this.
See,
you know that, Brad.
This is the frustration I have. Okay, this is a public entity. Okay, it is owned by the University of Missouri, which is if you work for KWMU, like all the people there are essentially they are employees of the state of Missouri. Correct? They get a Missouri state paycheck.
You're right about that.
Okay,
yeah.
They get a Missouri state paycheck. Okay, and they get on the air and they say, "Oh, our listeners support us." Bologna sandwiches. They get a bunch of money from the university. The university paid for the studios. University pays for the tower and the rental and all that kind of stuff. It's paid for by taxpayer money, okay? As a taxpayer, I don't want, that would be like let's say all of a sudden, they have a fleet of the highway patrol vehicles, all those nice police interceptors, the Daytonas, the Dodge Chargers, and the Ford Explorers. Okay, all of a sudden they had a bunch of them sitting in a parking lot. They were the retired state highway patrol vehicles, and all of a sudden they're all gone. And you go like,
Dan Borgmeyer, let me interrupt that, because let's use an actual example. Dan Borgmeyer comes out and says, Brad Hildebrand's right. We're going to sell off all of our city parks.
Right.
And they say they're going to sell, is Wapple Horse Park in St. Charles?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. They say they're going to sell Wapple Horse Park. And they say it's their intention to sell it, and they have some bidders. Dan Borgmeyer can't say, we're going to sell it to John Lamping for $1.2 million. He's got to say, we have a few interested bidders. We're finalizing deals now, but we're signaling our intent to sell it. You get that example, Brad, because you know that like details are still being negotiated. You can't expect a public entity to give you all the details before something is finalized.
But I say, my point that you interrupted me on, I say all of a sudden you went by the parking lot where all those police interceptors were there, and all of a sudden they're gone, and you called up the highway patrol, and you say, where'd those go? Oh, we gave them away. What do you mean you gave them away? You could have auctioned them off. People paid $10,000, $15,000 for them, and they're in decent shape. Get what I'm saying?
If this wasn't a radio topic, you wouldn't care as much about it. But you're invested emotionally in KDHX and St. Louis Public Radio.
It's just like yesterday. There's a Facebook group that I got invited to. It's called Boss Radio Group or something like that. And some guy posts a picture of the storefront where Bob Romanik used to run his radio stations over in Belleville or Swansea or someplace over there on the east side. And the guy's saying, he said something to the effect that the FCC didn't like Bob Romanik. Okay, that's like saying that, what's a good example? That the Democrats don't like Donald Trump. Okay, they hate Donald Trump. Okay, but the deal there, it had nothing to do with the FCC liking or disliking Bob Romanik. He screwed up big time. And
and you know where I learned about that was Miss Rachel.
And
can we get onto that topic?
And his huge ego his huge ego from getting on there and calling people the N-word, and just, he had so much money he didn't know what to do with, that he bought these 4 radio stations. And the sad part of it is, the sad part of the story is there's people posting pictures of all the towers laying on the ground, cut up for scrap metal, 4 different transmitter sites on the east side, and the FCC is never going to reissue those license. And furthermore, I doubt if the FCC would reissue those licenses, then you get all the NIMBYs. Oh, I don't want a tower in my backyard. Oh, that's gonna make
Brad,
my cat sterile.
How do people feel about cell towers? Have you ever known someone who's been to a meeting and somebody's family member called and proved their point about cell towers?
Not going to go to that. Okay. Okay, Miss Rachel. Okay, here's another thing I get turned on to yesterday. Okay, the Babylon Bee.
You're saying you get turned on to Miss Rachel?
No. The Babylon Bee has a funny story. If you listen to the arguments in front of the Supreme Court the other day, Ketanji Brown did not do herself very well. I mean,
it was laughable.
Yes,
and she was trying to talk about men and women, right? I just heard like a 2-minute clip.
Right. It's to the point where it sounded like listening to Kamala Harris explain something. It was sort of like, okay, what is she saying? Can we get a translator? Okay, so the Babylon Bee has a funny story, and they have this photoshopped up, or whatever they're doing now, AI'd up, where they have a picture of Ketanji Brown sitting in a chair, and the Supreme Court has hired Miss Rachel to explain the difference between men and women to Ketanji Brown. Okay, now I'll be honest with you, I did not know who Miss Rachel was. Okay, do you know who Ms. Rachel is? You know who Miss Rachel is?
I only discovered her about a month ago because other parents had said something about Miss Rachel, but she's apparently now super liberal. Like, she dresses up. If anyone has older kids and remember Blippi, I guess she's kind of like a female version of Blippi, I guess.
Okay, here's the interesting thing. I immediately go to my site where I find out all these YouTube people about how much money they're making, okay? Miss Rachel Toddler Learning Videos is an American YouTube channel with over 11.4 million subscribers. It started 6 years ago and has 113 uploaded videos. The net worth of Miss Rachel's Toddler Learning Video channel through 15th of January 2026. John, take a guess the net worth of her channel.
$25,000.
$49.912 million. Okay.
Incredible.
On a daily basis, this is on a daily basis. She makes, this is an average, $76,000 a day, $537,000 a week, $2.3 million a month, and yearly $27.9 million. And to give you the last days, yesterday she made $151,984. The 13th of January she made $80,000.
Those are great numbers,
Yes.
Brad. Fantastic.
Right. The 12th of January, not so good, $28,000. But she rebounded on the 11th, $113,000. That's Miss Racial. And I'm thinking to myself, this is crazy. And all it is, and if here.
Hey, that's good. Hey, listen, we're running up against time, though, Brad. The point is she makes a ton of money, right?
Yeah, she makes a ton of money. And what are we doing wrong, John? What are we doing wrong, John?
I think we're doing everything right, Brad. And tomorrow is Friday.
John, I will talk to you tomorrow.
All right, see you then.